the Index Mundi basic literacy statistics, which suggests that more than 30% of our population are completely illiterate. But when you look at the figures for young people, 15 to 24, they are a little bit better. It says that 20% of our young people in the ages between 15 and 24 are completely illiterate. They can't read at all, read or write. And it's a little better for young men than for young ladies. Men are at about 81% and ladies are at 79%. Now tell me this, I have children, I keep saying to them, read. I buy them books, read them, they don't read. What am I doing wrong?
Sometimes it depends. You have to do a variety of things. Usually, if I have a book that I want my kids to read, sometimes I'll start reading it. Sometimes I'll start reading it. We used to have reading hour in my house. Now I don't enforce it that strictly, but we used to have. The reading hour did not count as part of your homework.
So you're saying that when we say that poverty is directly related to reading or even literacy, you are talking about the poverty of attention of parents to start with. So if you have poor time resources and poor attention to devote to this, you can expect to compensate with money. So just like governments or well-meaning NGOs or individuals cannot really create a reading culture by building libraries and putting some books in there, parents cannot improve reading in their children by simply buying them books and saying read.
No, you can't do that.
It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
I have to read to them.
You have to read to them. You have to read with them. They need to see you reading. So in order to read, there has to be that culture.
They have to see you reading.
Reading is important. So when they are young, you read to them. Bedtime story, it's now almost compulsory in most developed countries. You have to read to them. And when my kids were little, they used to have a log. So you read and then you kind of like sign. And once they start reading, 30 minutes after doing homework, they read something. Usually those are like story books and stuff like that. And then you sign. But they have to see the parent reading, because children do what they see, not what they hear. And so a lot of also variety for them to be able to read. But it has to be important. If you just say, hey, go and read, usually go and read, do your homework, it's different. So the resources, then the interest, and it has to be the culture. Children need to understand this is important.
Okay, lots of questions coming from viewers. Some are really nice about attention spans of both readers and parents. Patience Abiro, she is posting this in capitals. She's screaming at us. Says most parents do not get time to read storybooks to their children or even help them to do their homework. That's a nice observation. I totally agree with that. Patience, I wonder if you would. Edu Mensa Ajiman says, but why is it that when I start reading a novel and get to the middle, I lose interest and feel lazy to continue? Niashite thinks that there should be more fun activities associated with libraries and with reading, like acting and other types of interesting things. Alaji Alate says he wants to know what the number of books a person should read a month be in order to improve his or her reading habit and increase his or her vocabulary. So those are some like really interesting questions. How much reading, for example, should one share with one's child? At what age? How should one really make time for it if one is really tired or really busy or both? And
that kind of thing, at least 4 times a week. If you can do it every day, at least 4 times a week. It also becomes an opportunity to bond. Even when my son was in class 6, he still loved to hear me read. JHS were reading last, just reading a book. There was a book I wanted them to read. I had read it, and the others had read it. I wanted the 2 to read it. They didn't want to read it. They said it was boring, so we decided we were going to read it in the evening. Maybe after everything, 7:30, we turn off the TV, we gather around, and then we read them in chapters. So it becomes a time to bond. And so as time goes on, go to bed, we haven't read yet. You see, we haven't read it, so it becomes something they look forward to. There is that direct, almost one-to-one correlation between reading and even listening comprehension, and then vocabulary development, and then grammar. Because I've found that with kids I work with, if they are not reading, they don't understand grammar. So you can talk to them about all you want about verbs and nouns. They have no idea what you're talking to them about. And then you realize that if you ask them questions, they start memorizing and giving you back directly what you said. They are not processing. So reading has also a direct correspondence or relation to comprehension. So we need to make time. 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be long. 30 minutes, 20 minutes, you sit down, you read with them, read a little bit, you take a book. You don't have to finish the book in one day. You know, so if you're slow or if you're not very good, you can maybe read one paragraph or read one page. But the practice and the consistency, it's important. So if your children are allowed to come to your room and you're tired, you come from work, they can get in your bed and then you read 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and then they go back to wherever they are. But you have to make the effort. So if we're making the effort in the home, then we can require of the schools to do the same. We need to read to the children. KG, class 1, class 2, class 3. Because it's sad when someone in class 8 tells me he's never read a book before, apart from textbook. He's never read a storybook before. And he's in class 6. And then you wonder why the child has no comprehension skills. You cannot develop comprehension skills without book. You can't do that.
Many parents would even discourage their children from reading outside the school curriculum. They say, well, you are reading useless storybooks. These are not going to help you. You should go and read your textbooks. And it's interesting because once again, this is something that is really common and prevalent in our society, in our culture. You can have a situation where a child would see their parents reading, perhaps born into an academic family, and have access to books, be encouraged to read, maybe even be read to. But as soon as they get into school, the parent, would tend to discourage this child from reading novels. They say, well, when we say read widely, we don't mean go and read storybooks. Don't read things that are of interest to you. Read things that we think are important to you. And this is science, biology, physics, chemistry. What would you say to that?
No. Of course, the children don't have to neglect their books. They don't have to neglect their textbooks. But first and foremost, they have to see reading as a source of pleasure. So the more they read widely, the more they even building what they call the neural passages in their brain, the neural pathway. So every time you read, your brain cells make connections.
Exercise is physical exercise for the brain, and your brain gets stronger the more you read.
It's stronger. You see, when you're born, your brain doesn't get bigger as a baby, so your brain size is as it was when you were born. The only thing is that the more you read, your brain gets denser or thicker and heavier. So it doesn't matter what you read. The more you read, your brain is building more connections, so it's getting bigger and it's getting thicker and heavier. And what it does is that it makes it easier for you to grasp things you read, to understand the breadth and the depth. So we may read the same thing to different people. Depending on how much we read, our understanding of the same material will be different.
Okay. Now, looking at the picture that Index Mundi paints for us, it tells us that roughly a third, let's say a third of our population, 24 million, a third of us, that's 8 million people, can't read at all. Now, how does someone who can't read at all encourage his or her child to read?
It's different. It depends on the parent and what the parent wants for the child. If the parents begin to think that my opportunities are limited because of my inability to read, and I want better opportunities for my children, they will bank all their hopes on that. Like, you need to read. If you've read anything about the first black neurosurgeon, Ben Carson, the mother herself was illiterate, and yet she encouraged her children to read because I'm cleaning people's homes because I'm illiterate. She dropped out of school in class 3. But I don't want you to be mopping floors, because if you don't read, that's what is going to happen. So what did the mother do? The mother said, every week I want you to go to the library, read 2 books, and write about it, make a summary, and bring it to me. What the kids didn't know was that the mom couldn't read. So once they bring it, he looks at the way you've read and he said, okay, read it to me. And she listened and said, well, you didn't, go do it again. Eventually, the kids, 2 boys, moved from the bottom of the class to the top. Incidentally, the mom went back to school. Once she saw the change in the kid's life, she also went back to enrolled in adult school and went back to school, actually graduated from college. So it depends on perception. I want a better life for you, and you cannot get it without books. And especially in this information age, you're not going anywhere without reading. And our development as a nation depends on it, if we need critical thinkers.
Does language matter? Yaqub Muhammad says, well, some people who read Arabic and perhaps even in local languages are still considered to be illiterate. Is that fair? And Rodalina Arthur sent us a beautiful post. Says, so what I do to help my younger siblings is to first read a storybook I've bought, then give it to them to read. Thereafter, the one who is able to read well and tell the story receives a prize from me. And it's fun. It has really helped my sibling. That's a really nice example of how to encourage reading. Would you give her a thumbs up? Or
That's no thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, sometimes do we say bribe them? It's leverage. So if you read this number of books, you get this. And the kids look up to it, and then they'll get it. So if you read, maybe you want this story, you want this. Okay, if you can read this number of books, I'll get you that. Because whatever thing you can do to encourage them to read. A friend of mine was telling me a story that their family loves reading, and their youngest daughter didn't like to read. So at the dinner table, daddy has a book, mom has a book, older sister has a book, and she sat there. So they're eating and reading and laughing. Eventually, she said, I'll learn to read even if it kills me. And she ended up reading. Now she's a librarian. And so she said at some point they will let her read a number of books and say, okay, if you can read this book, we'll take you to the bookshop, and whatever book you want, you pick it up. Or we take you to the store, whatever thing you want, you pick it up. But you read these books. So it becomes a balance. Sometimes you pick up some of the books they read, and you give them the freedom to also pick up some. But it has to be a culture.
Children seem to love pictures, whether they are in comics and books or on television. How can we use pictures to encourage children to read?
There are some books which are called wordless books, and there are books with just pictures in them, no words. So as the child goes through the pictures, and I have a few of them there, you encourage them to describe the pictures. And then sometimes, so what story do you think will go with this picture? So maybe the child tells you the story, and you may write it, and paste it in there on a sticky tape or something, and then it becomes the child's thing. But wordless books or pictures are good for creativity. So you find that books for very young children come with a lot of pictures. So the children are not only reading the words, but also the pictures, and the pictures stimulate the creativity, the imagination, and understanding and stuff like that. And since we all look at things differently, pictures become very, very important. But then, are we talking about moving pictures or still pictures?
So where should we start? Should it be, it all begins at home, in other words, creating our culture, or should we start with saying, well, we want government to institute a policy and programs and projects to encourage reading? Should it be culture before policy, or should it be policy before culture?
It has to be both ways. Otherwise, we have the classic case of the hen came first or the egg came first.
The chicken or the egg?
The chicken or the chicken or the egg. It has to be a culture. And if it's a culture, it starts at home. And I've found that if the culture is at home, it can kind of translate into the society. And then we can begin to put pressure where pressure needs to be. Because I think there needs to be a policy on education. Not just education, but on reading. Now, in the UK, I know that from kids who are in 6 years old, are all being assessed before they can get promoted to test whether they can read, because they found out that if they're going to drop out in the high levels, let's say high school, the problem starts at the foundational levels. In US, all the public schools have to teach reading, and there are different aspects, what they call components of reading. If the education officer comes, you need to show that you're doing this and what you're doing to do, like phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. If you are a private institution, private school, because it's a national policy, you need to also do that to stay open. So if they come and you're not doing it, you lose your license. If you are in a government school and you're not doing that, you lose your certification or you don't get your funding. So if it's a policy, then it comes with pressure and it comes with oversight. And then because the schools are under pressure from the authorities, they also tend to put pressure on the family, because they find that most of the time reading skills comes with culture. You see, the home directly influences reading skills. So you can have a child, let's say, coming from your home, and a child may be coming from an illiterate home in the same classroom. The child who is coming from your home is coming with better, hopefully literacy skills, and so better background knowledge, better comprehension skills, better vocabulary, better ability to assimilate grammar than someone who has nothing. And that disparity is going to show in the academic performance. It doesn't matter how much you want to explain it away, because reading takes language, and language takes listening skills takes reading and comprehension, and they all go together. So when it comes down to it, they find everything begins with books. Either let them read or read to them. You build their brain pathways, and I'm finding most of the kids who can read have trouble with even math problems. They can do 2 times 2. If you put it in word problem, they can do it, because they can't process. They don't have the comprehension skills to take it.
They haven't developed that part of their brain
to take it. And so they're finding that, and I'm finding that, because I keep reading that, I keep researching. Now in the US and UK, they've come up with a policy. KG to 3 is devoted to literacy and numeracy. No science, no RME, social studies, and all of that. So if it's going to be science or any of these, they do them as what they call non-fiction reading. So instead of being a subject, it's taught as reading. So you read them as books, and then you discuss the content, you discuss all of that, because they found if the children are not reading, they can do science. They can do any of those things. So it doesn't matter how we take it, it is foundation to our educational system and to our national development.
Thank you very much. Next time you come, I would like us to take a look at what PTAs that are so popular now in schools can actually do to improve the way we encourage children to read at home and in schools. I've been talking to Madam Ejapong, and we've been looking at ways to encourage children to read, ways to improve literacy overall.